Thanks for listening to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk. I wanted to tell you about my Music Production Club. It's a monthly subscription service that gets you new music production tools in your inbox every month. It's a little bit like a Patreon, actually. This month, I'm giving away arrangement templates for Ableton Live. If you've ever had trouble figuring out how to structure your tracks, how long the intro should be, or how long the chorus should last, how many bars should each verse be, these arrangement templates are MIDI clips you can drag right into your Ableton Live session, and they contain the arrangements of famous songs. It's a really great way to help you get from 8-bar loop to finished track. Your Music Production Club membership also comes with my live performance with Ableton Live video course, an Ableton Live performance template, an exclusive pack of racks and instruments available only to members, the Ableton Live Pack Archive, which contains 200 Ableton Live packs, and my What Bob Ross Teaches Us About Music Production book that will help give you some ideas and philosophies you can use in your own music making. My guest on today's show is Todd Reynolds. You're going to learn a lot about him. But right now, Todd is doing a 2-day online course this weekend, Saturday, December 12th and 13th, 2020, from 12 to 4:30 p.m., in which he helps you learn how to create an online presence. He goes over video, streaming, all kinds of things that he's been perfecting over the last year since he's been in lockdown. I think it's a really awesome opportunity. His videos look great. You'll see when you check them out. I've got links to this in the show notes, so you can just click on those to find out more about this course, Amplify This solution series called Level Up Your Virtual Presence. And now, on to the show with Todd. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Todd Reynolds. Todd, you're one of the actual people I've met in real life on this show, which is a funny rarity, believe it or not.
Yes, indeed.
So it is nice to have you here and to talk to someone that I know actually does exist in the real world.
Thanks. It's great to be with you, Brian, for sure.
So Todd has there's a lot we could say about you, really. If you go on Wikipedia, it says American violinist, which is definitely one of the standout things. You're an amazing musician, and your work with classical music all the way up to, I think, what you're calling present music now is very interesting because it's pushing things forward, incorporating technology. Todd is also doing quite a lot of education these days. And we're going to talk a lot about Amplify This, where he's helping you level up your online presence, which he himself has done quite a bit. I was just watching his live stream before this. We'll talk more about that. But Todd, it's great to have you here finally. I feel like we're well overdue for this one.
Thank you. Yes, we're overdue, and it's great to be here. And I've been watching you and all your activities ever since I met you. And it's just a great pleasure to be here in quasi in person with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, your work is super impressive. You've worked with so many. Reading the names of people you've worked with is incredible, like Yo-Yo Ma, Graham Nash, Bruce Springsteen, Jeff Tweedy, and then all the other work. Your Outer Borough album was the Amazon Classical Album of the Year, and when I listened to that too, I was kind of expecting more what I would stereotype as classical music to get that title, but it's really very forward thinking, very modern. You're doing some really great stuff with Ableton Live and performance and live looping. So I'm excited to pick your brain and catch up a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
So we had our meetup about a week ago for the Hudson Valley Ableton user group. So it was a nice chance to reconnect.
Yes, it was. And to meet Mark, too, Mark Mosher.
Yeah.
And
Neil.
It was cool.
Yeah.
And Neil I've known for a while. It was great to hang out with him. I don't think we've ever actually hung too much.
Well, I think I met Neil when I met you doing
exactly.
TechServe presentation back in those days.
Exactly. Yeah. Ableton users group. Man, TechServe.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I was with a friend of mine the other day who lives up here, and he had one of those, it's an oscillator, right? But I mean, for those who aren't watching, I'm holding up my hands to indicate 12 inches deep, 5 inches wide, 6 inches tall. It's just like this with a knob on it for frequency, like a knob for frequency and a knob for gain that he got from TechServe before they closed.
That's like one of the World War II spy like looking things.
Well, once I was at I teach. One of the things I do is I teach at the Manhattan School of Music, which is like the one of the conservatories that's not Juilliard, and which everybody knows the name of that. But there are some fine conservatories in New York City. Manhattan School is one of them, and it's 122nd and Broadway, so it's pretty uptown, and it's right around the corner from Prentice Hall on 125th, which is Columbia University's music studios. It was the Electronic Music Studios. It's the famous one, the one with all of the like the whole wall of like four oscillators and envelope generators and all this stuff. It's a wall's worth of computer. It was the RCA computer. It was kind of the original synthesizer, sequence synthesizer. We can look that up, or you can grab a picture of it for your viewers if you like. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's an amazing thing to see, and it's still there. And some of my friends call that their office, which is crazy, right? Why was I telling you this though? What were we talking about just before?
Well, we mentioned those oscillators, the TechServe.
Oh, that's right. So what I was saying, the reason I was telling you that was that I saw like a stack of them, like 24 of them there, these same oscillators, the one of which was in TechServe, and I asked one of my friends up there, how much did that cost? And it was like, oh man, it was a couple $1,000s an oscillator. I was like, wow, isn't that crazy? And now you just
how far
pull in an instance of operator.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is wild. I mean, even just the last few years with what you can get for hardware.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's hardware a good time and then, to be a synth person and, electronic musician of any kind, really.
Right. So we did that users group. That was great. So we got to hang there, and then you asked me to do this, and then you got sick, and now we're here.
Yeah, we are here, and it's good to have you. I just was watching your live stream right before we started. You're doing a stream every day in December, where you're sharing you're doing a little bit of live performance, and you're also talking about, but this is tied in, maybe you can tell us a little bit about amplify this and level up your performance. Because you really, since I guess like the pandemic started, you've really decided to jump all in on live streaming and the internet is your stage, as you've said.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of an interesting thing that took place in March. It was March or April when we first started thinking about it. First of all, I had never gone live, ever. I am not a YouTube content creator. I look at people like yourself and all the other great, Ableton certified trainers and folks like that who are constantly putting out content. It just like gets better every single day. And I also, of course, watched you putting out your packs and all that stuff. And it's like, that's a whole level of exposure and visibility and engagement with the public that I never had time for. And I guess start there, never had time for. And all of my teaching would be in the context of a college or a university, and I would travel the nation and like talk to, different people, different types of music departments, and turn them on to Ableton Live and maybe do a concert. So I would kind of be all in this system rather than using the internet at all. So when things went indoors, and what I affectionately now refer to as the Great Pause, there was such reflection for me about so many things. I mean, already I was performing a little bit less. Something happens in classical music when you get to a certain age. It's like, you can continue to try to, tour. And if you have people that you're affiliated with who remain touring and there's loyalty there, then you continue touring with them, right? But I mean, some of the names that you mentioned at the beginning, some of them I actually have collaborated with and worked with for a long time, and some of them I haven't. Bruce Springsteen is somebody I was very fortunate to appear for 7 shows with. on stage with a bunch of other string players. So that's not like my gig. And the same, and Graham Nash, we did a thing for VH1 long time ago. So those names, of course, are people that I have a lot of affection towards. And, Todd Rundgren and Joe Jackson, my band toured with them for like 12 weeks in the US and Europe. However, people like Steve Reich, who were my steady gig, people like Meredith Monk, another great artist who I had the extraordinary opportunity to form a string quartet for and work with for 2 years, my own band, Ethel, which was a string quartet. These are people I worked with long term. These things, you think they're long term, but then Steve Reich stopped touring with his band, unlike Philip Glass, who still tours with his band, right? So they're all or mostly band projects. Steve Reich now, everybody else plays his music, and then he goes to the gig and makes an appearance. Both of them, equally extraordinary fathers of the faith, I guess you would call it, in terms of minimalist music and electronica and techno and everything else. It's like, it's not, if not for them, right? So anyway, the point being that I had already started to kind of not tour as much. And I'm teaching at Manhattan for the past 10 years, Manhattan School of Music. And I also moved 3.5 hours away from New York. I kind of left New York in 2016, permanently in 19. And so I stopped doing the studio scene. The studio scene actually stopped me. Studio scene of playing as a violinist is just, kind of began to peter out. Broadway has always had a challenge because even though there's a union in New York City, the jobs were going away. I did do a couple of Broadway gigs. Anyway, it's just started to think, and Isabel, my partner as well, let's move up there where we have some friends up in Massachusetts. There's a whole reason for that too. And so we did that. So I was already kind of starting to look at other ways of teaching and performing, but not doing anything about it. When COVID came, I began to realize that I'd never looked in a camera. I'd never done this content creation. I am a kind of a photographer at heart as well, but I don't have anything that does video. I have a nice Nikon that does still shots, and I love it. But so I started to say, well, I better start looking in a camera lens and start getting used to this. And there was a whole bunch of like psychosis that went on, just such self-consciousness and, sweat pouring down my face. And it's a weird thing that our brains do, we like make really big things out of things that may not be so big. It took me a couple of days to get kind of comfortable. And I took some test video and stuff like that. And I finally decided after watching a bunch of videos and, just to push the button and go live. So I did that once, and the first time that a comment came back at me, I felt better. And all of a sudden, that comment meant a connection. And at least me as a musician, it's about nothing else other than that. And when we perform on stage, we don't even get the chance for that type of connection. You go up on stage and you play, right? A lot of people want to see virtuosity for classical musicians. I've never been about that too much. It just doesn't attract me. Flexing and power and stuff like that. It's more about heart stuff for me. So I began to realize that with those comments and that engagement, I could have more of what I wanted. So I started that, and then I talked to a coach. And that coach said to me, after asking me what I was about, and I told them what I was kind of interested in and who I wanted to be for people and what kind of a contribution I wanted to be for my industry and for people. She said, "Yeah, I really think you could do this. I really think that there's a place for you out there. If you put a stake in the ground around the things that you think and you're passionate about." This was also during George Floyd time too. So like post George Floyd's murder, I just leapt on to the internet stage wanting to say the things I wanted to say and to be of support. So I started doing that. And as I did, all of a sudden, Isabel and I we dug down and we're like, you know what? We should create the infrastructure for learning here on the internet. So we started what we thought was going to be a school. these first imaginings that you have are very, I mean, we look back at it now and it's like, boy, we were babies then, weren't we? So, this is something I want to talk to you about as well, because, you had to start someplace, your business and the way you do things. Well, we just started. So our school, air quotes I make, our school, we started in March or April. So we're babies. And we did our first inaugural event, inaugural program in July. I think we started in July. Bang on a Can, my musical family, who's like really where I sit and live. We have up where I live here, we have a summer institute every July at Mass MoCA, which is Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. So that had been canceled because of COVID. So I'm like, all these people have all their summer programs canceled. Let me put out something into the world that makes sense. You can still see the skeleton of that program on my website on toddreynolds.com. You can see under Amplify This, you'll see, what we did there. I think I should probably take it down soon and replace it with the next one. So we made this, and I began to do these level up your virtual presence type of classes. I did a free 3-day training so that I could get to know folks, and so to let them get to know me, just to generate interest and to see if anybody would be interested in going on this journey, on this 8-week summer course journey. And thankfully, we had some folks who did, and they came along. One of them was there today on the stream, and we had an incredible time. First breaking out the technology conversation. Some of them didn't know Ableton Live. I turned them on to Ableton Live. They bought pushes. We talked about recording and, the idea of being creative powerhouses. Like if you're a classical musician, are you a creative powerhouse if you aren't actually generating your own music as well? If you can't record yourself? So we started to talk about expanding. It's called an expansion lab. So we expanded that way. Then we started to expand musically. It's like, what styles, what genres, what ways of making music do you wish you knew or had a flavor for or touch with or some sort of practice in, that we could kind of maybe build a little path for you to go investigate that. And then the third prong was, if you're a musician, we've always been fascinated with building audience, right? That's kind of the goal. How many records can you sell? How many tickets can you sell? Da, da, da. And during this time of racial unrest, of social unrest, of problems with the public health system, with us just like floating out here without a lifeline, it seemed to me very clear that we need to be building community rather than audience. Mm-hmm. So those were the 3 pillars on which Isabel and I built our Amplify This program. And now we are setting up for a program next year, starting in February, which will be XLab 2. And it's up until we get there, we're planning some free trainings and so on and so forth. Once again, and I'm going live every day this month, just to kind of say this is who I am, and this is what I'm about, and these are the subjects I love to talk about, and would you like to hang out? And then, further on down the line, we can hang more, in a more official way, if that's appropriate. The February program is paid. It's a 5-month long program, 20 weeks. Wow. 5 times 4, 5 months, right? So it's a 5-month coaching program around projects. So if you want to make your first EP, if you want to make a whole record, wherever you are, it's about really, once again, putting a stake in the ground for who you are as a musician, and basically getting louder, just getting louder. So that's a very long-winded tale of our progress.
It's great because this is something like I think everyone sort of needs to think about a little bit, as a creator, as an artist, who are they, what they stand for. And I really like that you kind of went through the journey yourself and then are now putting together the lessons that you've picked up along the way. That's something like where it's fresh in your mind. You've been through it. You understand what it's like. Like you mentioned, staring into a camera for the first time. That's I mean, I don't know. You said you got used to it in a couple days. Like every time I turn on the camera, I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. You know, like it's just part of it. It's just that thing, you know, where it always feels a little funny, and there's always a voice going in my head, at least, of all the reasons why I shouldn't be doing this and why I look like an idiot, why I'm a fool. Like someone's gonna see this and think whatever. I mean, the story just starts playing in my head. It's like I put the movie in the DVD player of my brain. Woo. And then it's like, here you go, buddy. You're on that journey now, and you better eject real fast, or else you're not going to ever do it.
Right. Yes. It's called Imposter Syndrome. I mean, that's another word for it. And we hear it a lot, I think. And it's a wild thing. I experience it every day too, right? But it's just not about the lens, because somehow when I say that I got over it in a day or two, what I got over was the kind of intense resistance to it and rejection. When I look in the lens right now, as I'm doing with you, I don't have a story playing about this, but as soon as we end this podcast and I go to thinking about what's next for me in any direction, with my school, with whatever, that's all. I have a different DVD. So it's like we're all carrying around these different DVDs, and they're so torturous. It's hard. I mean, I think we should really, and you did just now bring it up, we should really get with that, because it's a formidable opponent, this thing we have in us. This kind of, it's a Buddhist thing. I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I'm not sure if you want to dig down too deep in this one, but we were born, we are born without observers, right? So like the way we think in that conversation that goes in our head, it's constantly going throughout our entire life. And we don't have the perspective of being able to point a finger back at it and watch it. We don't have an observer, which is what meditation is kind of about, is the like Buddhist like Eastern meditation. It's the decision, the choice to sit down and observe the mind in pursuit of breaking it away from the normal chatter and just watching it. So that's what people are for each other. That's what you and I are for each other, right? So like we say something and the other person reflects it back to us, or just the feelings of being with people. And of course we have less of that now, right? And doing it through a lens and through a screen is kind of weird. But I just sat there the first 2 months of the Great Pause and said, I am so grateful that I have internet and I can phone a friend and I can hang out on Zoom.
Yeah.
My dad, who's 93 years old, I call up the facility where he's staying and I talk to somebody and they grab the iPad and they walk into his room. And I can see him and I can talk to him. How grateful can you be for something like that?
I don't know what we would have done, honestly. I mean, I have the same feeling too. Like, oh, thank goodness we got this, because it was a lifesaver, literally. Yep.
On one of those first calls that I had with my dad, you know what he said to me? He said to me, do you realize that like virtually near the day I was born, not me, but my dad, that like close to the day that my dad was born, my grandfather lost his first son to Spanish flu.
Wow.
And my dad said this, and and we don't talk about George if ever. We just don't, because George died many, many years ago in 1927. So it's like 10 years after the beginning of the Spanish flu, this man died from complications from the Spanish flu. So this is what my dad says to me, and it's like, wow, pandemic to pandemic.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It's to go back to something you said. it's like secretly comforting for me to hear you feel like an imposter, so because I kind of like in my heart know that I am in a lot of ways, like I don't have a lot of like the formal education and like all the, everything I've done is, and this is also something I'm proud of too, is that I've done through my own work and my own time and efforts. But at the same time, it's also the insecurity too that, that's, or at least one of the places I can find an insecurity. I think the thing is we can always find an insecurity no matter what, no matter where we are. But what you've mentioned about like how you weren't thinking about that stuff now reminded me of how I feel at live performances, where the build-up is where the anticipation is, but once you get on stage and you play those first few chords, like now you're in the zone and you're not even, that monkey mind chatter is suddenly like muted, and you're just doing what you do, and you get in that weird zone type feeling. And I never made that connection really, that that sort of happens in this arena too.
Oh, in the podcast arena, you mean?
Oh, in the podcast, in the making videos, in the going live, all of that stuff. It's a similar feeling. And if you were to look at like some of my podcasts that I do by myself, I've recorded one yesterday. The first few minutes are like all these cuts and edits. I stop, start again, stop. But then it's like 30 minutes of nothing, of no stops. Then you're just in it and you're talking. But it takes that kind of like getting used to the water or something.
That's amazing to know. Yeah.
Well, I never really put that together and made that connection of the live performance aspect where you're suddenly just doing it and you don't even hardly know you're doing it.
Right. No, that's true. There's an interesting, I think there's an interesting opportunity available here at this point to talk about, severely educated versus autodidactic. I think that, I've started playing the violin when I was 4, right? Mm-hmm. Playing the violin for me is something that I do every day. It's something that I don't have to think about or worry about that much, these days. But how I got to that point is an interesting point. So I want to talk about that, but also want to respond to, the difference between music makers, right? It's like all of us come to music from whatever place we come to music from. And I do not, with one fiber of my being, think that one has to be an educated or severely taught or virtuosic musician to be a great musician. I also don't think that one has to be a professional musician to be a great musician either. I think that music is something that is native and is a birthright for every single one of us, and however we come to it is however we come to it. So I learned a craft, and it's called playing the violin. I learned that craft from some very, very heavy people and in some very heavy ways of training, which also bring with it a ton of baggage. I remember being in my master's degree at SUNY at Stony Brook and realizing that as I got up on stage to play the music that I was playing, I was always nervous. I was always nervous. I always had stage fright. And the thing is, when I got on stage, that didn't disappear like it disappears for you. I was worried that I would slip up. I was worried about what people would think because I felt like there was this expectation for me to play something perfectly. I was carrying the classical music perfection forward for myself. Right. And not until I started to play jazz or try to play jazz and rock and roll did that leave me. And what was really interesting about that, do you remember that in Port Jefferson there was a jazz club called Harrington's?
Yeah.
Yep.
I went to Stony Brook myself. So
right on.
I can,
cool.
I'll comment on that after you're done, but go ahead.
Right on. Yeah. So Doug Harrington had this jazz club in Port Jeff. They had an open jam on Monday night. It so happens that okay, here's a quick sidebar. I had the incredible opportunity to study with somebody who was thought of as the greatest violinist in the world. His name was Heifetz. He's long gone now, long passed from us. And he wrote a bunch of encores. It's like this, classical music, there's no improvisation. He wrote a bunch of encores on Gershwin tunes, right? So like, It Ain't Necessarily So or Summertime's a minor blues, right? So I would go to Harrington's and play a minor blues and be able to kind of improvise with the band there. And they gave me a gig which was funny because I couldn't play jazz at all. So I hired real jazz players and I played the heads and they all blew over it. They all improvised over it. That was how I learned to play jazz anyway. When I did that, I had to start out with the fact that I sucked. Like, period. It's like I can't improvise and I'm going to try. So I had to really cut myself enough slack to just be there and let my violin chops carry the day, right? So I made that choice to do that. And when I did that, it started to absolve me a little bit of the need to be perfect. And that's one of the greatest gifts in my life that I have experienced, is some reduction in the nervousness and the expectation and the need to be perfect. And that's kind of what these daily live things do for me too. Because as I'm working with Ableton Live and I'm managing too many things and I've got my violin in my hands and I'm trying to make music and I'm really trying to be present to what's coming to me, and it's great for meditation. It's a meditative experience because I'm really focused. I'm really one-minded. But I have to let it go when I play a note out of tune or when I play a wrong note or a really bad chord. I've got to have it not matter.
Yeah.
And that really helps. It takes me away from that need to be perfect.
So for me, it's almost like the opposite, right? So
tell me, I'm ready. I'm listening.
I had no formal training. I got a guitar when I was 14, and my friend showed me how to play Enter Sandman by Metallica. And I was into playing rock and roll, and as much as I really got into it, as soon as I started playing guitar, I was like, this is it. I love this. But as much as I was into music, the school side, I had nothing. I wasn't in the band. I wasn't anything. And it was just kind of funny that like I had this passion, but there was nothing there at the school for me. And I would play with a lot of kids like me, more or less. But every once in a while, we'd get someone from like the band, the school band, and they had this different like approach where they kind of needed to be told what to play. Like they needed the music, or they needed like a part, and I would be like, well, just fool around on it, because that's all I ever did anyway.
Right.
And that was really challenging for them. When I got to Stony Brook doing English work, I was taking as many music classes as I could pick up on. And I was often, as homework assignments, sent to recitals or concerts. And, I was completely blown away just by the musicianship and, the to me, perfection, really, in their performances. But I did notice right away, like, this is a much different environment than like these rock shows I'm playing on the weekends.
Right.
Where it's real loose, it's fun, and it doesn't matter, and guitar feedback, and
right.
Where you can see that these performers are under tremendous stress, and they're trying to get this just right.
Yes.
And everyone's watching them. Like,
man,
like scrutinizing them.
Yes.
And there were a few where, mistakes happened, and I felt just like terrible for the performer, because you could see like everyone that was staring at them suddenly go, like they're making notes about it. And,
yep.
So
yep.
tense. Something I learned as a musician, like in rock bands, was when there was a mistake, like go with it, have fun with it almost. Because I'd seen bands play where, the guitarist breaks the string or something, and then that's it. They're mad, they're upset, the show is like off, and that energy gets communicated to the crowd, and, it's all awkward. Whereas we learned if something goes wrong, like, laugh, have fun with it. It's okay. Let the audience in on it. This is fine. No big deal. And a lot of times, like, I think our personalities came out through those moments. So we were much more comfortable with that. And we weren't playing any kind of music that needed to be played well, So it was raw and it was, emotional and everything. So it was mostly fun.
Right.
But that other end was kind of eye-opening because, to see the symphony play or to just even see like one student playing her cello in front of all these people on that stage, it was just so tense in a lot of ways. But still, it was at the same time, I'm like, I'm never going to be the musician these people are. It's just not the road I'm on. But it's a different world on a lot of ways, and I can understand how your experience going into like the jazz club, where it's all about like that kind of stuff, would be a shock to the system. And even though you have that craft down, you're an elite player at this point. That's just another universe, and there's so many universes in music and in art,
right?
And like you said, I know people that couldn't tell you the notes they're playing on their guitar, but just bang out great songs.
There we go.
And you're just
there
like,
you
don't even take lessons. You don't even know what key you're in. But like, man, how did you do that?
Somebody taught me these 3 chords and I started singing. It's that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of our greatest are like that. Some of the greatest in American music. Yeah, it can go all those ways. It's really funny when you were, first of all, when I was in that jazz club, well, I guess what occurred to me just now is that there's this convoluted, paradoxical thing where, like, I walk into the jazz club and it's a whole other universe, but I'm carrying with me an attitude of perfection, which I know then I have to start to let go of, but then you got to perfectly let go of it. And you just kind of, your brain just gets warped so much to the degree that when you were just telling your story and you said, I recognize that there was a lot of stress up on that stage. During that point in your story, I just noticed that my hands, which had been at my sides, just got crossed in front of me kind of naturally in protection, probably.
Right. Yeah.
It's really crazy to think of that. And, of course, if I back out and I zoom out from that, we can see this in so many different parts of our lives, right? Where it's like we're taught to really grip something and it's not fun anymore, and a lot of us persist in doing that, whether it be a day gig, whether it be, whatever that we're not fully expressed in. I'm not even talking about music, just anything. But you grip it and you start getting attached to something that's not quite right and you make that normal. Well, that's kind of one of the things that I think that's kind of the cost of some of our education in all things, in academia, period, maybe, but for sure in classical music. And I think things are changing, in classical music. I'm watching at the Manhattan School, things are changing, even politically, with the kind of reawakening of racial issues and gender issues. It's like, our school, for one, is trying to take a lead role in like moving things forward, like really forward in exclusivity and diversity. So I think when you do that, when you start breaking apart some of these strangleholds on ways of being, it really does loosen stuff other places too. And when I get my people coming into classes at Manhattan School, we're talking about very talented people, right? And what they're coming to do is like a second master's or a first master's in what is known as contemporary classical music, right? So in order to want to do that, you have to be prepared to work on the fringes. You got to be prepared to work in art music. The music that you love is by composers that have been breaking the mold. They're kind of like the Beethovens of their day, right? So the music doesn't sound anything like anything. It's like unique to them, right? It's really creative. So those are the students that I get. And when they come in, we only have 14 in our program. When they come into that program, they are already open and seeking and excellent and awesome. And then I get to teach them Ableton Live and Max. And what I'm really trying to offer is the permission for them to be originators and composers and improvisers with this stuff, not just interpreting somebody else's music.
Yeah.
And as that is accepted, I think things change. They're also, all of them, bringing in something else to the party. You know, back when I went to school, you wouldn't find a violinist at Eastman coming in knowing anything about bluegrass. Now I got people walking in, you know, who play Irish tunes, you know, and had that as part of their life because the culture has changed so much.
Right.
And some people coming in with Ableton knowledge, like really good Ableton knowledge. It's really cool.
Well, it must be nice to get that energy too, those like open minds that aren't,
yes,
you know, so stringent to the
yes,
the tradition, maybe.
Exactly. But the good news is that, you know, my sense is that it's changing all over. You know, my hope is that it's changing all over. I mean, I'm kind of talk about blinders. When you're a New York person, you know, the whole world looks like New York. That's unfair.
Yeah.
You know, you only see New York and you don't see what's going on in Idaho or Iowa or, you know, whoever went from the major institutions to teach there. You know, it could be different, and I don't know. You know, but that's what it's like in New York anyway.
Well, I do see that kind of happening in areas. You know, even like with Berkeley online, where I teach my class. You know,
yep.
They've really.
I didn't know that you taught a Berkeley class. How did I miss that? Of course, you teach a Berkeley class. Yes.
Yeah, sampling with Ableton Live.
Yeah,
it's a great class. It's I mean, it's so open-ended too, you know, it's like the idea of sampling these days. Like, what does that even mean? It's
exactly.
To me, everything is sampling now. I record my guitar, and now it's a sample like that I can play with.
Right?
So,
right.
But they've embraced like the laptop and MIDI controllers as instruments.
They really have. Yes, they have. Indeed.
I mean, that's so nice to see. I've encountered a little resistance to that in the music programs in the schools. You know, like trying to bring Ableton Live into the school system with like we got all the pushes donated when they came out with Push 2. They did that incentive and they sent us a ton of pushes. And here I am with like thousands of dollars of software and hardware trying to get anyone to let me show this to the students to get anything happening. And
now I'm sorry, Brian, that I forget. Can you tell me what level of school you're teaching?
High school.
High school, right?
At the high school. Yeah, I think there might be a little more open-mindedness happening. But in the beginning, I was really shocked that like no one in the music department was interested.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even in a selfish, preserve your job kind of way, like because the music programs
nobody's talking to nobody's able to talk to them about that issue. Probably, you know, they probably don't want to hear about it either. That things are changing.
Well, you know, the arts sadly get cut in education very often.
Yeah.
So if we can get more student interest in this, because the kid that wants to make hip hop beats is not signing up for, you know, choir or
marching
band, you know,
right.
But they love it. They could be a valuable part of this community,
right.
You know, this program.
I mean, all it would take would be you standing like in front of an assembly, especially as a faculty member, with a push and a guitar or whatever, and doing a performance for them, the kids would go crazy for that.
Yeah.
Especially anybody who was interested in hip hop or anything else.
Yeah.
Show them that they could make TikTok videos, and then you'd be, come on now.
And we've got a club now, which is great. It's official. It took a little while to get going, and I had like secret club before we had the real club. So I was doing it a bit anyway.
That's great.
But I see the kids in my school that remind me of myself that were really into music, but the school just had nothing for them.
Yeah.
I took a general music class in 7th grade, like a year and a half, 2 years before I started playing guitar, and fell in love with playing music for the first time. And it just meant nothing. I hated the class, honestly. I didn't even like it, you know. I think I went every other day, art and music, and I hated the music days. I loved the art days. And it wasn't like, it was just this like general, boring basics. I remember we were learning about like duple and triple meter, and it was like, it meant nothing to anyone.
Right.
Especially,
Yes.
and here I am. I'm this like little budding seed that's ready. I don't even know it yet. And all it would have taken is someone to just like open my eyes to it. And it got missed. And, you know, it's just, that wasn't the part of the music I was into, but it was just kind of a shame. And so I see like the kids now that are into all this other stuff, they're never going to sign up for, you know, marching band, like you said. But they would love like a studio recording or a songwriting or something like that.
There's a lot of, you know, did you do magic when you were young?
Like
was that
magician?
Was that like a French drop? Yeah.
No,
Was that an interest of yours?
I think I had like a little kit, like
Yeah, a little magic,
at one point.
because all kids do at some point.
Yeah,
right?
like it wasn't anything that lasted though.
I was so into magic when I was young, right? And I guess the line that I draw, and I still now and then do some magic. I still have some gear around here,
Nice.
and I'll do that. I do it very rarely because I think there are people who do magic, and I'm not one of them. But you know, card magic, all sorts of stuff I did. But the real reason I bring it up is that I think that kids are fascinated with things that seem magical. And when you can play something into Ableton Live and press a button and it plays back at you, when you can make a beat out of your voice, when you can, there's so many things to do. I mean, the very idea, I have a soft step foot pedal that I use to control my sets. And as anybody who's watching or listening to the podcast may or may not know, the Soft Step 2 can send continuous controller information, so 0 to 127 with pressure, so I can step down on it and step up. And then I can scroll through an Ableton rack, or I can trigger a looper, you know. So the idea that I can stand on stage and do this stuff with my feet and make stuff happen in real time is kind of magical. And that, I don't know whether I intend the audience to be fascinated by that, but I'm fascinated by that. And it's so much fun to be able to do stuff that I couldn't do with just a violin in my hands. So I would imagine any kid with this magic in their hands would be so happy and drawn forward into learning more in this way.
That was what got me. It was magic when I first realized. That day with the guitar, I never knew that if I had a guitar and I knew where to put my fingers, that I could play the songs I heard on the radio that I loved. I didn't know I could do that. Like, I was 14 years of my life, that thought just never came into my head. To me, rock stars were magic. They were sent down, struck by lightning on a mountaintop somewhere, you know? So it just wasn't a thing that I could do until I saw my friend do it. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, you know, like the secret to that? And
it's magic, isn't it?
And music still is like that, you know, even if I'm learning theory, you know, I think maybe as a way to avoid it, sometimes we will like not learn theory. Like I don't want to ruin the magic of it. This. But when
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of resistance or something. But when I do learn something new, it's like, oh, that's like the secret key. That's that's how I can get
that unlocks the next door.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, that's how I can fit that chord into this major scale and it doesn't belong here. Like, ooh, that's exciting,
That's cool. Yeah.
So it's still magical. And even every time I start like playing around and I don't know what I'm going to come up with next, and next thing I know, I hear it. And it's just like, how did that happen?
Yep.
Where did that come from? Because it wasn't here
Yep.
a second ago.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I wish I were, I have this constant wish, you bring up Berkeley, which is your employer, that there's this thing about going to Berkeley that I heard, and I'm sure it's probably true. As an instrumentalist, you go to Berkeley for a 4-year degree. The first 2 years, all you do is sit in a room and practice scales and arpeggios, right? You're learning your changes as a jazz musician. It's like what you do. And there's a part of me which really wishes that I had that training. Once again, you start thinking to yourself, oh, would I lose the magic if I had all that information? And yeah, you can get pulled this way or pulled that way. So I have a little bit of that, right? It's like I could really use a little bit more harmonic color in my improvisation. My pieces tend to be 1 or 2 chords, not 20. I also would feel really uncomfortable if I learned that stuff and all of a sudden I was like a prog rock geek playing in 7/8, in 7/8, music which I respect so highly. But I mean, it's like there's all this stuff you could have.
Yeah.
And all these paths you could go down. But of course, there's still time to change the road you're on. Anyway, I had to do the Zeppelin quote. Sorry. But so I don't know where I was going with that, but it was the theory thing. The theory thing is kind of a bug in my bonnet, a bee in my bonnet too. I still say, what if? I had a composer once. Now this is here. Let's check out this word for a minute. Counterpoint. Have you ever done a study of counterpoint?
Not a study.
So, I mean, this is something that when you're in music school, they teach you in like intro to theory.
This is where you're going to find my imposter.
No, this is where you're going to find mine. And so I see. You're crossing your arms. I got you.
Protecting myself.
So, yeah, I hear you. So what's really interesting about this is that if you want to be a composer, like a classical composer, this is like part of your education. It's like if you're a linguist, you're learning Latin and the Germanic language. You don't get away without doing that, right? I never did a firm study of counterpoint. And I have a couple of really close composer friends. When I started to compose, they kind of very gently and beautifully and wonderfully, said to me, you should really study counterpoint. And I'm like, will you be my teacher? They're like, oh yeah. Well, that never really worked out. But one of them did give me this standard counterpoint book. And I said to him, I said, why? I mean, why do I need this? I mean, I don't write notes. I don't write music like you write music. So, I mean, the way that notes behave toward one another as they pass, why do I need to know that? And then he said the most brilliant thing to me. He's like, it isn't about the relationship of note to note. He says, it's about the relationship of objects in space. Okay, so I had to think about that one for a minute. But what I began to understand is this is what compositional architecture is like, right? So it's not only about how this note, moves against that note. It's more about balance of anything, balance of objects. So like architecture has that, sculpture has that. Counterpoint is the way that music has that. Right? So like if you and I were to make a conscious study of counterpoint, our arrangement view would look different. The way that we would compose songs and like put things against each other would be different in an educated way. Maybe that would ruin the spirit of what we do. I'm perfectly good with that idea that maybe that's not a good thing for people like us. But that's, I kind of finally understood from a real composer, listen to me. I finally understood from a composer one way of thinking about the balance of things musically, right? In our techno things or songwriting or whatever, music that all of us who are working, in kind of the software sequencing space that's very grid based, we have forms. If you do a songwriter form, you got your verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus. You have a song form. It's kind of delineated. In the techno space, it's all four. Everything's four. So groups of four, changes on groups of 4 or 8 or 16, and so that isn't really present there. It's a different way of thinking. It's kind of a way that I enjoy thinking more than in like some kind of mystical, like balance counterpoint sort of way. I enjoy the music that I listen to, and that's kind of the music that I make. But yeah, it's interesting to think about this. This is how these composers like Beethoven or current composers like Michael Gordon, if anybody doesn't know his work, kind of like Michael Gordon and Julia Wolf and David Lang, these are the Bang on a Can composers. Their music comes out of the lineage of Philip Glass and Steve Reich, but breaks it and makes it into something completely different and very urban and very current, over the past 30 years. And then the people that come through our academy, Bang on a Can Institute up here, those are other, incredibly strong, younger compositional voices that are out there right now as well. So it's like, the music evolves, but that's how they make the larger scale pieces, is by really understanding how things can really balance and do larger scale forms rather than, like an 8-minute set, an 8-minute form. There's this great piece I want to turn you on to and your listeners. This is a favorite thing of mine. There's a piece of Michael Gordon's called Weather.
Like the rain or...
Yeah, Weather, exactly. Okay. WEA. And it was written for a string orchestra, a string orchestra in Germany, I think. Anyway, it's put out by Cantaloupe Records, which is Bang on a Can's record label. One of my favorite things to do is first snow, turn off the lights, look out if you got a moonlit night, first snow, headphones on. It's an hour-long piece and very repetitive. And yet when you put that on, kind of the power and strength of the architecture and how things kind of just change slowly over time, and the shifts that you hear in the headphones, it is an extraordinary thing to do, is to listen to this big, long work. And what's interesting is it is called Weather, and it's in 4 sections. So when you think of like Vivaldi's 4 Seasons, which everybody knows, it doesn't sound like this or have any connection to it at all. But when I hear the word weather and I hear 4 sections, I like start to think that. And you can really feel in this piece cycles, which end up, to be about an hour long. So anyway, it's one of my favorite things to do, and it kind of brings you into a current view of classical music. Not that current. It's at least 15 years old, I think, by now. But even more current than like Steve Reich's music. And Steve Reich is, of course, still alive, still composing. But his seminal, huge works like Music for 18 kind of are the same. That's another one for your listeners. Music for 18 musicians is an incredible piece of music. And when you listen to that music, which is completely, instrumentalist on a stage, no electronics at all, you begin to hear some of the patterns and influences that you've heard in techno music or in house music or in electronic, in any kind of EDM. It's related, So that's kind of how classical music and electronic music have kind of existed together over the past 30 years.
I could see that relationship a little bit. And this was something that started happening to me, I think, as an Ableton Live user. Really, when I started like building like my live set, I was going to put all my different songs onto one project. I made the decision that I was going to have like, all right, one track will always be drums, one track will always be bass. And then I was like, well, then what's the next thing? I was like, well, that'll be like the next frequency area higher. And the next frequency. So it went up by frequency. And that's been a big change for me. And I'm looking for balance in like the sections of the frequency spectrum. So when I'm like writing something like, all right, I got a lot of low end going on here. Now we need something to balance it out.
That's counterpoint.
It's like frequency counterpoint.
Yeah, yeah.
And now a new thing that's
balance,
happened in the new beta here in 11, they've kind of updated like the multi-clip editing for MIDI.
Yes.
So it used to be where they always had to be, I think, the same length, so that you can see all the MIDI notes. But now they don't have to be. And you can actually, if you have a whole track made of MIDI, you can look at the whole song in that editor down there. And then
it's crazy.
And then you really see the relationships of objects in space in the notes that are playing.
Yes, that is cool.
Yeah, and that gave me kind of like, when I first opened that, I was like, wow, this is the whole picture here on the piano roll.
Exactly, on the piano roll. And then add to that whole, dragging the I don't know what it's actually officially called, the edges of where the notes, the edges of the note loop to change the relationship of the pitches to the grid. So they contract and expand in relationship, but not in relationship, not evenly. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. I think you're like stretching them, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a stretch. Yeah. It is totally stretching, but I don't know what the actual. I'm trying to think of the technological / musical name for that thing, or what Ableton calls it. But I guess they call it stretching, right? They're just stretching your MIDI clip.
We're talking about like you grab like a group of MIDI notes, and then you can pull the pull
the right slider out, and it pulls the location of the notes out.
Yeah, the MIDI stretch.
Yeah. That's when you do that, you could do that as a compositional tool, right? And you could find your notes the notes that you chose lining up in a different relationship to the notes that are going along with it, and it wouldn't have to be exact either. So you get some real subtle variations in things as you use clip after clip after clip with a different length. Is kind of what I'm proposing. I haven't played with it. That's my bad. I tend to hang out in audio more than I do in synthland, and that's just because my comfy place is having my violin in my hand, right, and looping it. It's kind of where I tend to hang out more. But I've been working with Wavetable more, and really enjoying that a lot.
Yeah, it's a whole world. It's a whole universe. Every little thing you can open up, which I think makes it really difficult to make music sometimes, is that every little thing you open up. I was playing around last night, and I got the Prophet 6 here, which I
Congratulations.
love. It's beautiful. I've had it for like 5 years, and as much as I love it, it's like woefully unexplored, and as much time as I've spent with it, still it's every time I go on that thing, it's like, oh, listen to this subtle thing that's happening. And, I keep learning about it. But I just put an arpeggiated line in there, just like 3 notes arpeggiating back and forth. And I had the hybrid reverb open.
Yeah.
And one of the algorithms is called tides, and I don't exactly know what that means, but it's not exactly reverb. It's reverb-ish. But
reverb-ish.
But it's something weird is happening, and I found myself just sitting around for like an hour, just turning the knobs slowly and just listening. And I made a little video. I put it to like a clip of my dogs running, which we spoke about before we started recording. You got to keep those dogs busy, or else they'll find something to get busy with.
Yep.
But I was just loving
yes, I see.
how just the subtle turns of those knobs on that one algorithm on that
yes.
device, combined with the Prophet and it's got that slop knob that
Yep.
makes it a little, temperamental
Right.
to your preference, which mine is usually pretty high.
I don't actually know the Prophet 6 at all. So you're speaking Greek to me, but I totally feel
It has
what
this
you're saying.
beautiful knob called slop, and all it
Slop.
does is make everything inconsistent. Changes the pitches
So
a
it's
little bit.
kind of like a randomizer.
Yeah, the pitches, the timing of the envelopes, and everything just
I
gets
see.
a little like broken. But you can control it, and it
That's
just
really great.
suddenly, you turn that knob a little bit, and like things just come alive.
Yep.
But I guess
Well, I will tell you, I have hybrid reverb now set to tides in my set. You'll hear it tomorrow on my stream.
I would say make a loop with your violin,
Yeah.
something like maybe you were doing in your live stream earlier, which was really great music for you to be talking over, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe run that through there and just play around with like the size, I think it's called. And
Right, and there's a rate too.
yeah, there's a couple like kind of funny controls on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I got into it, but once I got in, I realized like an hour had passed.
That's called flow, right?
Yeah,
That's
it was,
like the
it was
definition.
something hypnotic happening, and just
Yeah.
I was just really surprised with the strange world that was coming out of this, and it wasn't exactly reverb.
Right.
It's like more like reverb, recreates a room, but this was more like a universe or something. And not because it was too large. I don't know how to explain it, but
I may not sleep tonight now because you're totally getting
I was
me
up way
interested
too
in
late
this.
last night.
Yeah. Were you using a big convolution?
No
response,
convolution.
or-
It was
like none.
just
So it was
the
blend
algorithm.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. All
Yes.
right. I will totally
So
check that
yeah,
out.
if you're playing around with the 11 beta, like fool around
Yeah.
with the tides.
Oh,
algorithm.
I have it right here. I'm ready. I say, yeah, tonight it's happening. It's happening.
But I think I brought that up just as an example of how there's just so, like you mentioned, wavetable and how deep it is. It's just so many paths to go. You can get lost. I guess like having an instrument too, like you have the violin, I have guitar, it kind of like does give you that focus a little bit.
And also comfort,
Yeah.
I also, I've always had plenty of MIDI controllers around me. But as I watch DJs and other electronic musicians, constantly manipulating their gear, and even back in the old days when I used to watch videos of Square Pusher with his 8-track tape machine, in front of him, and watch all that stuff going, it's like I would always think that was so cool to do, and it was cool for me to watch. And like when I go to see Square Pusher at the club in New York, I'd be the guy around the side. Everybody be in front of the speakers enjoying the music. I'd be around the side trying to see what he was doing, So I was always interested in what people were doing with their MIDI controllers. But then when I would try to do it, I'd feel still kind of disconnected from it. So that violin thing for me, it's been really great the last, I don't know how many years since I've had a push, and I forced myself to use the push more. I'm like, no, this is going to be the one I take with me on tour. This is the one. This is the one. This is the one. So now, with my violin in my hands and my soft step, I really do have, and the push, I've begun to find this way of making music kind of half with the instrument and then going ahead and touching the gear. I did make a decision a number of years ago just not to touch the laptop anymore. There was also in the academic community, there was also this conversation about touching the laptop and how that was kind of distasteful. People got a distaste for that, and they're like, don't touch it because it's not, it's not that people will think that you're checking your email, but you might as well be, because you don't get to touch anything tactile, and people aren't, I guess live coding's a different thing. I ran into a live coder the other day that has kind of blown my mind. I forget what his name is, but he was given to me. Anyway, sorry, that's a total digression. However, where it all started to make sense to me, Brian, was when there's this, I got handed an operator track, and all that was happening with it was that it was inside of a rack. It was an instrument rack. And so the frequency and the decay and like all sorts of stuff was mapped to the 8 macros, now 16 macros. But it was mapped to that, and with one clip in it, which gently modulated pitch. And I could then spend time making music exclusively with the decay and release times and the filtering. And oh my God, that was a new world for me. And that's when I started to use MIDI controllers more and feel good about them. But still, I mean, this is all just to say that, yeah, having our instruments, your guitar, my violin, it really is I don't even want to call it safety. It's that tactile thing. I guess I was trying to make the point that we do need tactile things. And touching the laptop is a tactile thing, but not really. And having MIDI controllers and really getting to know your setup is a tactile thing. But never will it be as tactile as the thing you grew up playing.
Yeah. Well, there's a clear like understanding. If I'm got my guitar and I do a big Pete Townsend swirl with my arm and hit the chord, like you saw that.
Yes. Yes, there's a connection, and that's performance, right? Exactly. And when I said that there was this conversation in academia going on, that was the conversation.
Hit the drum and like, I see what happened.
Right? Right?
It's very
exactly.
self-explanatory, but yeah.
Exactly.
But MIDI controllers can be the same thing. I mean, you can be pressing buttons and people are like, I don't even know what you're doing. Like, it just...
Oh, man.
And...
Yeah, the number of times that the people have come up to me because at the beginning I had nothing in front of me that I touched. It was like I play the violin and I'm playing 100% of the time. So I'm playing the violin and I have a foot pedal down here. So I would make something up literally from one note, from scratch, for 20 minutes. And after the performance, somebody would come up to me and say, "Were you playing with tracks?" And it was so demoralizing.
No.
It's like, I just
Is
made
that an
this
iPod?
thing for you. I just made this thing for you out of nothing. It's kind of like, it's a point of pride for me that I can do that. I can make a composition for you. And you thought I was playing with tracks. It's just kind of like, I'm not Josh Groban. I mean, it was kind of no shade to Josh Groban. But, it's like we've all been doing tracks for a long time, We still do that on stage. But yeah, it's the tactile thing. Well, it's good.
Like you mentioned, having that rack with the specific macros, and it kind of like told you what knobs you're going to turn, and it was set up. I kind of feel like that's like what you have to really do with your MIDI controllers. You got to give them like a role or a purpose, because when you just get like an APC, well, even the APC 40 is like kind of prescribed, it's telling you what to do. But if you just get like a keyboard with some knobs and faders, in a lot of ways, it's like handing you the strings to the violin, the bridge, the fretboard all separately. You kind of have to put it together. The nice thing about the violin and the guitar, they're made already. You have to build your instrument inside a MIDI controller, make it into something useful.
You're so correct. You're so correct. That is a great way to talk about it. I must make a quick aside just to so applaud you for your Bob Ross book, by the way.
Oh, thanks for checking it out.
I love that book so much. I love it so much.
Thanks.
There's do you know the Underground Producers Alliance?
No.
UPA. It's an underground. It's kind of a Brooklyn group. It's not a group. It's a school. It's a full-on school, like masterclass school, headed by and created by Roz Messenai, who is a great percussionist and was known to be a performer, composer, and just kind of really strong presence in the downtown new music improvising scene with like John Zorn and folks like that. He's an important guy and has lots to say. And he started this school And there are lots of Ableton Live practitioners in there, very heavy people, like Scotty Hard, who mixed it, who's one of the Wu-Tang Clan, has done Wu-Tang Clan albums, mixing and mastering, and Val Janti, great Haitian percussionist, electronic. Anyway, yeah, the reason I brought his name up is that in his racks, when he makes Ableton racks, he makes sure that there's no names on them, on the macros. So you kind of have to, I mean, of course, anybody could change that, but his point is you need to know what your knobs do musically, and they need to become an instrument for you that you don't have to stare down at to figure out. Yeah,
I like cool. that non-technical. Yeah? I think you're an OP1 user, right?
Yes, I am.
How those, you don't know what that's a cow. and you just, these four knobs do something to the cow, but you listen. I like that approach every once in a while when I'm making a rack. I'll name them weird things. I did Dream Keys was a pack I made, and one of them's like REM. One of them's I had to forget what they were called, but they weren't like filter sweep or
right.
Technical things, because sometimes you think too technically, but I think that happened to me last night with the hybrid reverb. I'm like, what is this thing doing?
Right. Right.
What is this sound that I'm getting? Like, it doesn't really sound like reverb. It's something different.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think, it's great. Like, I'm glad I've studied and learned synthesis and what envelopes do and how LFOs and how everything interacts. It's so nice to know. And the thing that's funny about that too is it's not like you ever figure it out. Like, you're always
no. Yeah.
surprised on some level, and you're always learning. But when you don't know what you're technically doing, sometimes you stop thinking mathematically and technically, and you start like feeling, and you start listening.
Right.
It gets fun there.
It gets totally fun there. I can really lose hours of time in front of Ableton Live, just hours and hours and hours. Don't find it that easy to finish things sometimes with all those hours, but I can, if I allow myself to just get lost and get in a state of flow, it's a feeling like no other,
Yeah. Well, I made like
recently.
I don't even know if I can get away with. We had one of those Zoom moments.
Go ahead. I think we got a huge delay all of a sudden.
Yeah, we had a Zoom moment.
Yeah, go ahead. You were saying?
Well, I'll finish it off. Like, what I wound up doing yesterday, because I was literally hours just listening to this reverb, turning knobs, maybe like reaching on the, just
completely blissed out.
Yeah. So, but I decided to make like a little bounce of it, like 4 minutes or so. And then this morning I put it to the video, and that was like, I'm really glad I did that. And not because I'm like going to say it's like a great piece of music or anything, but it's nice to kind of just put the lid on it, make it for something. And
yes,
this might be something you get some use out of, because I've done it for the podcast too. The last episode I put out, the intro music is it's a wavetable patch that I had made in the past and started playing around with, and they have MIDI clips now in Live 11 that are like all these like complex chords, flat fifth, add 9, and every.
Where?
It's in the core library under clips. Then it's MIDI, I think, and tonal. So there's
I'm not finding any folders under clips.
You got to go under packs and core library.
Oh, duh! I'm sorry.
Oh, it took me a while to find them too, because I saw that was in the release notes in the latest release.
Oh, I see. Under tonal, I see it. Wow.
So there's a bunch of them. So I just threw a few on a track and let those play while this wavetable's going. And I think I'm running it into Amplitude. I'm trying that out, because that's probably going to be the next thing I waste my money on. But anyway, I just had this like kind of like weird ambient thing. So I said, let's just bounce it. And then the next day, I was doing a podcast. I was like, cool, I'll use this in the beginning. And it just, it gave me like so much satisfaction that like, I don't have the pressure of feeling like I have to complete this anymore. And I don't have the guilt of not doing it.
Yes,
yes.
And you certainly don't have a deadline either that you're up against.
No. And I mean, I've got a bunch of things I use for intro music for the podcast and never really settled on much. But it's nice to have an excuse to use that stuff. So I'm thinking you're doing all these like daily streams. Like this could be a little way to utilize some of that stuff. And I think kind of what you were doing today, you had that. I guess I missed when you created it completely, but it looked like something you did with Looper with your violin, and you had kind of like a background music to your conversation, something kind of soothing and unobtrusive. That's it's a nice use for your noodles, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right. That's exactly it.
Without the guilt, it's like
exactly.
I don't know. It's like exercising after you eat cake or something.
Yeah. Totally. Well, one of the things that I'm actually going to be doing over this 31 days is I'm going to darn it, discipline myself to actually make something, and so I'm like building this day by day with different clips, cool. And then gonna work on it on Sunday. After the stream, I'm going to stay on for as long as anybody wants to hang out with me. I'm going to go over to Twitch. I'm going to like stop the stream and go over to Twitch and just do a just chatting session and see if I can't pull this stuff together into a song, or maybe compose with some people. Have some friends. Come on and say, hey, yeah, why don't you do this thing? Like more of that, less of this, more of that. Need more drums, need more kick,
I've done that a few times, not as much as I wish I had. And I've gotten like good suggestions, it's like collaborating with people in general. Like even if their ideas aren't good, they get you thinking about new things.
Exactly.
And even if you don't use what they say, it's like, oh, but you know what?
You impacted me. You impacted me with your comment.
And you know what? That's too, like when I play with people these days, and like when it comes to like, who wrote the song? It's like if you were there, you, in my mind, made an impact.
Exactly.
Even if you just said like, oh, cool, or no, I don't like that, or it's just that. That's the beauty of it, collaborating with people is like their idea affects the way you think, which affects how they're going to think. And it's just this like back and forth constant of interaction,
Yeah. When man, my mind is racing now that you bring that up. But, there's all these hierarchies and systems, socially. In music and, in corporate, environments and everything else, there's all these hierarchies and systems. And what you just put forth there is really it's also a band mentality, and it's a community mentality. It's one of the most holistic ways that I can think of talking about people making music together, the way you just spoke it. And that, I think, is like we need more and more and more of that. We need more and more of that attitude, that kind of community where everybody, it's kind of makes everybody equally important. There's some level playing field there. You were in the room, you had something to do with it. This is important. It's important that you were there because the energy that was in the room, you're in it. So I think that's a pretty good place to hang out.
It's so important. I mean, I've been playing with two of my friends over the last few months, like the one like social activity, and I mean, just I know my attitude is just different when I'm around. I'm a little more goofy when I'm around my friends, joking around more. And like we'll be just like kind of making up songs out of thin air. And if one of the guys laughs at something I said or something I played, that's energy. It's like songwriting. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that got a reaction, and that's maybe something I'm gonna pursue, or not, depending on the mood of the song, I guess. But usually the laughter is a good sign that things are working, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
a lot of
It's
feedback
yeah.
that you don't get on
Really.
your own.
Yep. Yep. And you also don't, we think about performance and thinking that we're getting feedback from the audience. And oftentimes, especially in classical music, the only feedback that you get from the audience is at the end of something that you do, where they applaud. And of course, there's pressure to applaud, so they applaud in a certain way. And then there's jazz, where, if you're in a jazz club where jazz is used to being heard, and that is the prevailing language of the club, then after everybody's solo, you're going to hear some applause, as well. So you get more instant feedback, and sometimes you'll hear somebody say "preach," you'll hear somebody be vocal, and it's accepted. But we don't get that. We don't get that feedback all the time. Then when we're working with each other, laughter can be real feedback. It's like reception, camaraderie. True.
And a lot of times, those like, if I have those bright moments or silly moments when I'm by myself, it a few minutes later, I might have that other thought going on in my head where it's just like, you're being dumb, you're being lame, being,
Yep.
without that feedback of someone like kind of also getting it with you. It's very easy to not hold on to it and lose it.
So true. Yep. Yeah, it's that conversation that we started talking about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah. Well, you were saying you don't know how deep I want to get on the Buddhist meditation mindfulness, but I'm actually really interested in that, because I mean, in doing some meditation in the last like few years maybe, to just realize that everything is coming to you through the filter of your mind, and that filter is like 1 minute nice and rosy and positive, and the next minute it's the complete opposite. And it just, if you're not paying attention, which you're usually not, it's
Right.
constantly flickering in all different directions and colors, and
Right.
you just never
And
know
we-
what
and
you're
we
going to get
lose sight
sucked
of the-
into.
Right. And we lose sight of the fact that it's biological as well. That it's neurological. I mean, I'm going to say stuff probably that's way beyond my pay grade here and way beyond my knowledge level, but this is
too.
how it
Yeah.
occurs for me. It occurs to me that this chatter that goes on in our head, we most often, at least the people that I know in my lifetime that I've talked to, we so often chalk this stuff up to psychology, right? And, early childhood experience or whatever. We bring things forward, we make habits, so on and so forth. But really, beyond even that is just the neural network. It's just the brain and the body firing. I have my partner is type 1 diabetic. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's the kind of diabetes that doesn't get cured. You don't lose weight and cure this diabetes. But one of the things that can happen is low or high blood sugars, and those can really impact the mind. They can really impact functioning of the brain if it gets too extreme, which is why type 1 diabetics often wear packs and monitors to make sure that they really keep a good sugar level, just for better health and staying alive. But the deal is that from watching her over the years, I realize with my own self that sometimes I just don't feel quite right, and my thoughts go a certain direction. It's not necessarily only psychology. Sometimes it's just the frickin' weather, in your head, so you can have storms of neural stuff. I think anyway. I don't know how much sense that makes to you, but the actual physical act, and I think this is what you're saying as well, the actual physical act of meditating and noticing and becoming your own observer, quieting the mind enough just to notice thoughts without ascribing anything to them. This practice also has a physical result, of calming the body and the mind as well. So I think it's really a great thing to pursue in the pursuit of good health, not only mental health, but physical health as well. I'm trying to do more of it. I'm really trying to do more of it. And it really did help me get through, not COVID. It's kind of weird. I really started digging down into meditation again in my life because it's kind of gone in and out. Last Christmas, or just shortly before last Christmas, like November to December, Isabel and I both dug in hard, every day. And what was interesting for that is that when it came time to the high anxiety period of early COVID, I didn't feel as much anxiety as I think I might have if I hadn't begun the practice again.
Right.
And I think that part of that is actually physical.
Well, they say your brain, and this is above my pay grade too, but you're making, it's all about connections. I mean, that's why learning is so, we were kind of talking about, I forget exactly what we were saying, but how maybe it was through the counterpoint discussion, just how things are connected and you see it in other aspects of your life, the balance. I think that's where we were going with that.
Right.
So as I learn more about music, it also kind of makes me understand other things better too. And if I'm making these connections, for instance, when we teach vocabulary, at school, the traditional way is here's your 10 words, here's the definitions. Okay, quiz on Friday. That's the worst way to remember words because you're not making connections. You're just memorizing the order of the words for the week and then you forget it. But if you can make personal connections, if the word is ostentatious or something, and then you attach a person that's ostentatious or an activity and an experience and a movie line and the more likely you are to remember it. And that's really just and because your brain is making connections. And it's almost
exactly
the weather. It's water erosion. And your mind will follow those same paths
making
over
new
and
grooves.
Over. And you get in those patterns. And one thing that it has really helped me a lot with was how I feel about being a teacher. Because I would get a lot of insecurity about that. I mean, it's a big reason why I went by Afro DJ Mac for so long and not just my name, was I didn't want to get found. I wanted to keep that separate because I didn't want to get seen as a teacher in that musical realm. I didn't want to be the rock and roll teacher, give my kid a bad grade or all of that stuff. I thought it diminished me as a serious professional. And I would very easily do something that I was proud of musically, maybe I'll put out a podcast or I'll put out whatever I do, put out a song or an album. And then the teacher side of me gets really insecure. And I start going down this, put on that movie called You're a phony teacher, you who do you think you are with this responsibility of having these children? You just made this stupid song up for the last 6 hours. And then I'm going down that path and it's a groove and it's the wheels are on the track and it's
painful, isn't it?
Oh, it's the worst. And it makes me worse at everything I do. It makes me worse at music. It makes me worse as a teacher. But I think through doing some of the meditation stuff, I was able to understand that I'm just playing the movie. I'm just going into those thoughts. That's all they are.
Yes.
And
yes.
I can just get off the train.
Yes.
If I can
yes.
notice it, though. But that's the thing.
Once again, I am in the position of being able to engage in complete solidarity with you to say that even today, even this morning, I had a good moment this morning because I get up super early. I was up like 4, 5 this morning. And in my early morning kind of, thoughts, this is where a lot of stuff happens, that's both discovery and like really kind of stuff that I'm really excited about, that I haven't thought of before. And also some of the torture also happens then. And even it wasn't this morning, it was yesterday morning, I had the roughest time kicking aside the bad thoughts. The thoughts of, everybody else is doing this thing that I'm trying to do much longer than me, much better than me, with much better production value than me, with this and this and this that is much better than me. And who am I to think that I can do this? I'm a violin player. Why don't I stick to the violin? That's what one of my friends said. Why don't you stick to playing the violin? Like, what kind of friend is that? But it's like, and it's hard. And if you can notice it, yeah, you have a chance. If you can't notice it, you spend a lot of time and then you kick the dog, and it's bad. So I'm really grateful that even just in common speech, this word meditation and mindfulness training and awareness, it is becoming so much more prevalent and so much more common, and it's even being taught to children. So like not from a Buddhist perspective, from a mind, like an awareness meditation, mindfulness meditation perspective. So I think that as a culture, without any religious or spiritual trapping, we are beginning to realize the possibilities for health and well-being. Doesn't mean that the self-flagellating, powerfully negative thoughts go away. It just doesn't mean they go away.
Yeah.
It just means that maybe you do have a choice. Exactly what you were saying. If you can distinguish that you have a choice, then you can go a different direction.
Yeah, I think it's good that it is being stripped of some of that spiritual, not to say there's anything wrong with it, but I think that diminishes it because it sounds magical, it sounds supernatural, but it's actually as like organic and real. It's your body, your mind is your body.
It's actually as unsupernatural as you can possibly get.
Yeah. So it makes it sound like it isn't real or it doesn't work. And it's also not like, it's a practice. You got to do it. It's like
that's
exercise.
The other thing.
You don't work out one time and now you're a bodybuilder.
Exactly.
And even if you are a bodybuilder, if you stop for a while, like you lose it.
Right.
It's an ongoing thing. But it is helpful, and but it's always the challenge of like noticing and remembering to get there. And then sometimes you're so deep in it that like you don't even want to. I've had that too, where like I know, but like I don't even want to. Like I'm just not there. So.
Yep. I have the sleep problem where if the stars are not aligned and I'm not completely awake, I will drift off into sleep during trying to notice my thoughts. It was like, yeah.
Well, I don't think that's the worst thing either, because
It's not the worst thing. No, because you're resting.
Yeah, you're resting, and you're also not like consumed by those thoughts too. I fall asleep sometimes when I do it too.
Yep.
I don't mind like laying down to do it,
Yep.
So, I kind of, at least what I tell myself is like, if I'm falling asleep, then at least I'm not like, because if you can't sleep, usually it's because your mind is racing and you can't get out of it.
Yep.
So maybe it's like a sign that you kind of don't need it.
Possibly. I also had a really wonderful, I tell this story sometimes, wonderful colleague of mine and somebody who I respect so highly, really kind of schooled me on the idea that playing my instrument was a form of meditation, because when I did it, not on stage necessarily, where there are other things to think about, but if I did it and I was working single-mindedly at home, practicing or playing or doing whatever, or even this Ableton flow that we were just talking about, it's a form of meditation, because the mind gets quiet.
I think it is. I definitely think it is. I think a lot of the reason I like it is for that. I like it the best when I forget that I'm doing it and I lose track of time. A lot of things that I actually enjoy in life have that aspect to it. That I do kind of like forget about everything for a little while.
Yep. Yeah, totally. My friend, I had this experience recently because the whole election thing was for me a fairly tumultuous experience.
Really?
And my friend
I don't think
Andre.
it's just you.
No, you do.
Doesn't matter what side you're on either.
Yeah, I know, right? Doesn't matter. You might know Andre Chumley. And Andre is he's guitartour.net. He's guitar tech, show tech for Yes, Greg Lake. It's like for everybody, for like all these incredible Adrian Ballou, all these incredible bands over the years. Anyway, he and I talk a lot. He lives in North Carolina, in Asheville, like where Moog is and Make Noise and all those folks. The great musical capital. So anyway, we talk a lot, and he's been saying to me over the past few months, it's this and this and this, and it's but then I go down the basement, I make music, and it's okay. And I kind of didn't understand that, because I wasn't making a lot of music at the time, because I was just trying to like build my business, which is, although it's around music, it isn't making music right now. And there were a couple of days when I just put on Wavetable and I just played. And I remember there were a couple of distinct times when my spirit was like because there's a little fear about this whole, transition thing. There was, it didn't feel really good. And I was really getting a little upset. And there were a couple of days when I did spend 2 hours just making music, and I forgot all about it. And I hadn't used music in that way for a long time. And I did. And it really was I know I sound surprised. I was surprised. I was like, I had forgotten that this could actually do something this could be something that I could proactively do to change my state. And I think there are probably more people than less that use music as a state changer. I had forgotten I could. So reawakening to that was kind of, a new thing.
Yeah, I went through that not too long ago. It was over the summer, coming out of, not really coming out of it, but like, it'd been so crazy with the pandemic, and then, all the unrest, and just like everything is so huge in the world right now.
Yeah.
The news, like you have to check the news all the time. Like, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's happened since we've been talking?
Right.
Turn this off and be shocked. But
right.
It made me feel like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
I did a podcast on it too, and that actually helped a lot, just talking about it.
Just processing, right? Yeah.
But one of the conclusions I came up was kind of like what you're saying, is like, if the result is that I come out feeling a little better and I'm a little nicer, and that spreads to anyone else, that's good enough reason.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful thing you just said.
And we can, I get the same pressures too, where I feel like I got to be making content, working on things, and there's like business stuff, there's emails, and, did I pay attention to stuff I should for tax purposes and whatever it is. And it can get stressful, and you can confuse it a little bit. But it is it's just a few minutes away that you can just go back into doing it and get lost in it. And that's and it's I think it takes some effort. Like you have to sort of like force yourself sometimes. You have to just say, I'm going to do it. Because getting started is always hard because you're in those states, you're in those places.
For sure.
But
For sure.
find almost every time that once I kind of get into it, it's, I love doing it. So like,
Yep.
you get sucked in.
Yep. Once again, there's no resistance. Once you get started, there's no resistance. It's good.
It's hard though.
Getting started is one of the hardest things about making music, I think.
And you said it too about doing your live streaming. You said you just kind of got started.
Yeah.
You just made the decision. I mean, that's how I started the podcast. I had built it up in my head and I'd wanted to be doing it for so long. And then there were a million reasons not to do it because of whatever. You name it. It can be a reason.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of thankful for certain people that are public, figures in when I first started to investigate this, like my way of dealing with it was, oh my God, here comes a hurricane, right? This thing is now happening. We're in it. And everything that I've been watching Brian and everybody else do for ages, now I've got to think about because it's my way of my only outlet, my only possibility. And it's just an opportunity right now because I'm at home I'm doing nothing. I'm not touring. I'm not doing anything. So it's time. So my response to that is doing research. So I'm like, okay, how do you stream? What does this mean? What is all this stuff? And I'm like, one of the things I do not want to do is put something on a memory card and then log it into a computer and then edit it in Final Cut. I'm like, wow, that does not sound like a great use of my time. Although I know someday I'll have to do that. So I started looking and I'm like, oh, you can record into OBS. Oh, you can record into Ecamm Live. Oh my God, you can actually, but then you could also stream and record. So as I was watching people talk about all these softwares and the way of doing things, there were plenty of people who said, on YouTube, you want to be a YouTube content creator? You got to make 1,000 videos. So you might as well get started today. Look, here's my first one. Looks awful, right? Just do it. Make bad music. Make B-level product. Do something. So that's how it happened. And then with the live thing, I remember somebody from the Ecamm Live, somebody on their community Facebook page or on some video just said, just press the button. Worry about it later. Nobody's going to die here. There's nothing that bad going to happen. Just press the button. So that's what I did. So that was huge for me, to tell you the truth. It was really huge. Never mind the fact that I did it in different ways all through my life. Like I quit my orchestra job on a whim. What else did I do? I started playing jazz, not knowing what I was doing and just saying, okay, I'll get up on stage and do that. I'll give that a shot. So I've taken risks plenty in reinvention in my life. But this time I really did feel that, the resistance before I just decided to go ahead and press the button, and that helped. You're right, just doing it.
That's how I started the podcast. It was going to be live streamed. It was going to have different sections and different parts, and
you had it all designed, huh?
It was going to be so much of a production that it was never going to happen. But for whatever reason, that one day, I said, well, let's just see if I can even do it. Like, what's the basics? What's the bare minimum? It was a microphone. I was like, all right, well, there's one already here.
That's it.
And let's go.
That's it.
And
that's it. And that's kind of what
started to work.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm trying to teach in the classes, in the level up classes, is try to open up the possibility that people can do this too. Anybody can do this too, and they might already have what it takes. And if they don't, it doesn't need to cost an arm and a leg. Just like you said, what do you need? A microphone. You can get an SM57 for $99 and it sounds great. And if you're lucky on eBay, you can find one for $25. So it's like, there's no reason not to do something if you want to do it.
It's true. I mean, it's hard, but it's true. And,
Yeah.
But you have, like you said, you have to be okay with not being perfect.
That's a prerequisite. But I mean, it's kind of funny. Most of us humans, if I may say, once again, above my pay grade to say most of us humans, but because I'm not a neurological specialist or surgeon, but I think all of us humans have a desire to do something, right? And that's a very broad term, something. So whether it's say an idea, make some music, make a connection, start a garden, plant anything, plant seeds of any kind anywhere. If we want to do something and we have a desire, most of us humans are going to have that conversation with our perfectionist side. And the fear of being seen, the fear of being visible, which is all connected to that, right? Because failure is not taught in our culture to be a good thing. It's taught to be a bad thing. In other cultures, it's taught to be a good thing. But in our culture, it's taught to be a bad thing, or it's taught as a bad thing. So since we have this relationship with failure and fear, it's always going to stop us until we push past. And most of the time when we push past, we realize that it's not the life or death survival situation that our brain had made it up to be. And this is everything from ice skating to skiing to swimming.
Yeah, I agree. And it comes in waves. And I mean, I had a little trouble getting the podcast going again after, being sick. So it became like a big thing. I know when I go back to work, I'm gonna be confronted with all these like feelings. It's gonna be a little weird and a little tricky. And that happens fortunately so often with my job because we have like all these breaks like summer vacation where that first day in September, you're kind of like, I don't know how I ever did this. But then by the end of the day, you feel like you've been doing it for the last 6 months still.
Yep.
It goes away fast and it comes back fast.
It's so funny we don't remember the pain.
Yeah.
Which that's a good thing. Otherwise, we never get started again, right?
Yeah. So that's one good thing about being so consistent. Where like if you're doing this every day, like you're gonna, the blow is a little softened, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. You hit it. This is one of the reasons I do it. Right. So it's like, this is exercising that muscle in me. And it's also, it's an effort to encourage others to exercise that muscle, not just come see me do my thing, more come talk with me and maybe express your idea. Maybe talk about ways for you to move forward, right? And certainly come to my class, if you want to discuss these issues further, to like give yourself a chance to open up and do some stuff that maybe you've been resistant to or having problems being stuck inside of or whatever. Let's do it.
Well, I think that's inspiring to people too, especially the way you're going at it now, where you're like, I just started and here I go. And that's all you have to do too.
Right, exactly. It's that permanent student mentality. I really like it. It's a style of teaching that I'm very committed to. It's like, I'm teaching this material, or I'm introducing this material, and I am no less a student than you who I am offering it to. We have time differential between us of when I started to approach it and when you're starting to approach it. But that's the real difference here.
Right.
It's not that I know something and you don't know it. It's that we're all just kind of starting to learn this stuff and at different times. And of course, as a teacher, as a professional teacher as you are, you know very well when you see a student teach something to another student, that student learns more about what they know. Right? And I find this all the time. This is why I encourage, like in my college classes at Manhattan, I always tell my students, just reach out to somebody else in the class to see if they can help you solve your problem. Because if they can help you solve your problem, then that's a gift to them that you've given them, that they can help you solve it. Thereby they learn things more themselves, and maybe they see something that they didn't see before. And of course, if you can't find anybody to help you, come talk to me, because I want to. But it's really important to me that they work with each other, because then there's all this knowledge, all this spark that goes through the pursuit of learning, just at the very same level.
That's a nice way to put it, as a gift to them.
Yeah.
Because we always see asking help as like being a burden.
Yep.
But it's, I mean, I know for me, like, I never learned anything so well as when I had to teach it. As soon as you have to teach something, like, then you really know whether you know it or not.
Right.
And
Exactly.
you grasp it.
Exactly.
When I was going for my teaching job, I got a job as a leave replacement to fill in for a teacher who was having her third child. So, I got kind of thrown in there pretty quick after getting out of school, and they were reading The Catcher in the Rye. They were halfway through it. I'd never read it before. So I had to catch up, stay like a chapter ahead. And there was so many, it was the middle of the year too. So like, I didn't get the okay, the school year's starting, so here's the attendance policy this year, and here's this.
Right.
Everyone's in the middle of they're in the swing of things. It was Valentine's Day was my first day.
Oh my God.
So I had to ask a lot of people for help. I had no choice. I had to. And the funny thing that I learned is that rather than them thinking like I was just some idiot that didn't know what I was doing, which, I mean, I was, so maybe they did realize that, but it showed to them that like I cared enough to figure out how to do it.
Yes.
And it also showed that I respected them enough for their opinion. So I think it created we, like you said, we like to have a purpose, and it feels good when someone says, "Hey, you know how to do this. Can you help me?" It makes you feel useful. It's a nice feeling.
Yep.
So I found like a lot of those people were, when it was time to get hired, were like saying, "Hey, he's a good teacher," and they never saw me teach. They just knew that I'd maybe ask them for help, and I was friendly. And
a team player.
Yeah, and it's so important to ask for help. But I never thought of it as like a gift. I did recognize that it was sort of a confidence booster, or gave you like a sense of importance when someone asks you for help or advice. But the gift thing is a cool way of looking at it, because it is. I mean, it feels great when someone thinks you can help them.
Well,
even if you don't want to help them, it feels good to know that they think you can help them.
I mean, that's a self-esteem thing, absolutely, and that's one piece of it. And the other piece of it, which is most important to me, is that gift of the person learning that they can teach something.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a gift for them to have learned it better.
Yeah, they have to process it in a new way.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. They're processing it in a way. They're saying it because most people who learn Ableton Live are learning it in here. They're learning it with the mouse. They're learning it with their MIDI controllers. They're learning by doing. They don't talk it. They watch YouTube videos. They've got all these words coming in. They've got input, but they don't have to explain it. if they end up talking to a colleague about it, then what do they end up saying? They end up saying, oh my God, there's this really, really exciting thing that you can do. Let me show you what I did today. Let me show you what you can do. Or if somebody has a question, they say, I don't understand the back to arrangement view. Then you're like, oh, I got that. I got you. I got you. So it's the kind of gift of actually awakening passion, awakening the ability to teach, saying everybody can be a teacher. And isn't that great, right? For the culture, for all of us. It's just team building, I guess, community building.
There's a power in being able to talk it out. And
yes.
I've been surprised in doing the podcast how much talking my thoughts helps me understand my thoughts. And they're like these cloudy things, and then suddenly they solidify a little bit. It's like, oh, that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I definitely got out of doing this podcast, is whether it's conversations with people like we're having, or even the ones where I'm just kind of have some thoughts that I want to say on my own. It all really comes together when you have to say it in words.
Yes.
You define it, I guess, is what you're really doing.
Yep, you make it real. There's this idea that I really embrace, which is that there are other animals which have language, right? But there aren't any other animals who have the degree of self-reflection that we have. So it's this idea that we create our lives with our language. So, when you think of how we speak to ourselves, and even in saying, Brian, I'll meet you at 5:00 on Saturday to do your podcast, I've created something. It's more than just a few words in the Google Calendar day field. It's an idea that something's going to happen, and you and I are going to make that thing happen. So we've created something in the future, and then we live into that future. If we use language in a violent way, like for instance toward ourselves, and like say, I'm so stupid I can't learn that, then we create limitations on ourselves that we then live into. And the only way to get rid of those limitations is to re-say it, to make a new statement, which is not, I'm stupid, I can't learn it, but to say, I am learning this. And that creates a whole new field to live into. So I'm really interested in how we use language to build and shape our world. This is one of the reasons why it's been so disturbing for all this time to see cruel language used in oppression of any kind, or in derision or shame or whatever in our particular society that we live in every day, because the language is important. So anyway, that's kind of a digression, but it's kind of a pet thing of mine. And since I have problems myself, as I mentioned earlier, just in the morning getting up and having to wrestle these thoughts that are challenging and limiting, and try to say, no, I got this. You guys go over there and hang out, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start by washing dishes. But, whatever it is, trying to really use positive language to generate things. It's important.
Yeah. I've always shown my students a talk by Carol Dweck called The Power of Yet. And she's the one, I believe she's the one that came up with it, about like there's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset.
That's her book. Yes, I've read that book. I just had forgotten her name. Yep.
Yeah, so that idea that like you can either be fixed, where you're stuck where you are, I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that yet.
Yep.
And then that possibility is huge.
Yes.
And I think it's another one from, there's a quote, maybe it's Henry Ford, where it's whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Yes, I think that is Henry Ford. Remember when
It's
just
so
earlier in our conversation when I was talking about failure, right? And how we don't teach failure as a positive thing in our culture. That was from that Carol Dweck book. From the mindset book.
And that's the exact reason why I let all my students revise anything for better grade.
Yes.
You can get 100 in my class if you want.
Yeah.
You just fix what you got to do, and we'll pretend the old grade never happened. Because that's the self-reflection where you start thinking about like what you can improve, and it's not just this thing that happened to you, but it's something you have that control over.
Yeah, getting out of that victim mentality.
Yeah,
The empowerment mentality.
good stuff. So listen, I know you've been at this you've been in front of the camera for at least 3 hours or so now. So
I have been, and it's been a real joy.
it really has.
To
The
talk
time
with
flew
you.
by.
Yeah, and I gotta say this because this is something I say to all teachers. My father was a high school teacher in South Central Los Angeles. He was a music teacher, and in the end, something called Proposition 13 removed all of the arts monies for the school, so his entire arts department went away. He ended up teaching remedial English to keep his job before he retired. So he went through a tough time, and I watched that happen. So I'm just that's just context. Put that aside. But I just have to say to all teachers, especially who teach elementary school and high school, I always have to say, look right in your eye and to say thank you for your service, because it is too little supported and respected thing in our ecosystem, and is one of the most important things in our ecosystem. And every time I meet a teacher, I want to make that clear. And I hear and I see from you what an incredible, empowering environment you create for your students. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, you're doing your share of the work too, I would say. So.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, not with high school students, but yes, I am doing it.
Still, it's no less important, No,
No. It's no less important. But yeah.
It's
we understand each other, I think.
I think so.
Can I tell you about my classes and the dates?
Like
I'm not sure when you're going to put this out or not, but
ASAP.
Okay, so this is the
we get out for that.
Yeah, the level up your virtual presence is it's a 2-day free online workshop of 3 sessions. So it's like an hour and a half. And that is going to be online. It takes place in the form of a Zoom call. And it is on December, what does that say there? My
12 and 13?
12th and 13th, yeah. And I will send you a link for that. It's actually on my Facebook page on any of the streams. It's there. And then also, I am indeed streaming every single day during the month of December until the 31st, including New Year's Eve. And 4:30 on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Todd Reynolds, and Twitch at DigiFiddler. And what else did I say? And YouTube/Todd Reynolds, YouTube/Todd Reynolds. So yeah, so you can catch me there anytime. And we'd love to have any of your listeners join us just to see kind of what's up in that thing, and say hi, say I come from Brian, and you'll get special treatment. You'll get a table by the window, nice. And stuff like that. So yeah, that's what's up right now.
Very
for
good.
me. And thank you so much for letting me share that with
Well,
your
if you're
listeners.
not watching, you should know that Todd has just dropped some really cool lower thirds, which is just which is a term that I learned about 7 months ago.
Me too. That's what I learned at Brian.
I felt like I think you mentioned it before we started talking, and you said it, and I was like, lower third. Oh yeah, I know what those are.
Yeah, right.
But the little like names you see like on the news programs for the anchors, but it's a good little indication of the high production value of what you got going on. It looks great. So if you haven't, it's nice if I said, if you haven't been watching, check it out, because it's a good live stream. Lots of cool camera angles and good eye candy, lower third, and but
and
I
we're
think
developing it, and we're and we are growing it. It's like really, we're growing it from very little, since April. So there's plenty of room to grow. I've got a green screen sitting in the other room that I never use because it's just a pain in the butt to put up.
Yeah.
But eventually we'll get that, and all of a sudden I'll be performing in Egypt inside of a tomb. So
Nice.
we'll get there.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that everyone will get out of it is just what I think you've shown today is just this good energy and supportive spirit for people's creative work. And, I definitely got a rush of that from you today. So I thank you for that. And I think everyone should check you out. Just the fact that you're doing it every day is inspiring. Go to whether it's YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Instagram. Yeah. They're all up and running. Check it out.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's been such a pleasure to hang out with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much, Todd.
All right. Bye-bye.